Well, I'll tell you, the things that have been most powerful to me have been the real blessings I feel like I've had with being able to listen to the stories that King's contemporaries told about him that aren't in the speeches. Because the stuff in the speeches are bellowing and he was a wonderful speech writer and orator. But I think one of the stories that resonates with me most was, I was at this gathering probably about 4 or 5 years ago at this point. Andrew Young was there, who was one of the right hands to Dr. King, along with many others. Light-skinned brother from New Orleans, came from a little bit more of a higher class within the Black community. So he had a certain situatedness, in his approach, but got a chance to listen to Ambassador Young talk about this experience. And he tells this story about when they had just confronted a lot of these racist white folks in the South. They come home, go over to one of the sisters' houses who was making dinner for them because you couldn't go to restaurants because of segregation in the apartheid system. And he says, we're all out there talking about, man, these white folks this, these white folks that, man, these. And he was like, we took a little step beyond just the white folks. He was like, man, these crackers and et cetera. He's like, we're venting, rightfully so, because we just had this tough moment. He said, Dr. King came out and said, can I say something? And he said, they were like, all right, yeah, go ahead, Martin. Like, what you gonna say? Like, and he said, white people are no more inferior because of their racism than we are superior because of our ability to see it. He said, we were both born into an unjust story. He said, now it's our responsibility to keep pursuing our liberation. But as we do it, we need to make sure that we do it in a way that we don't actually carry a kind of hatred into the future that then causes us to start behaving in the ways in which that they're acting with us now. So he said, we got to pursue our liberation. And here's the reality. They're going to be liberated as we liberate ourselves. We're not doing it for them, but we do need to recognize that in the way in which we do it, they also will experience that. Here's what I drew from that story was that in the quiet times and the conversations where it mattered, he was contending with his friends for, hey, y'all, I feel you. But the question is, in community, how do we not go over the edge? I love it because it's over fried chicken and cornbread, fatigue, irritation, real stress. Folks have just done some real trauma. And in the context of community and friendships, they're contending for, well, who do we need to be in this moment? And we have a right to be pissed off, but how do we want to show up? To me, the biggest teaching of that is I feel like Dr. King was able to hold on to a certain ethic, not because he was some saint or some angelic demigod. I think he held on to it because he was in community with other people, that he was wrestling with this. And I got to imagine there's got to be some stories we haven't heard where he came in and was like, yeah, man, these crackers, they owe my nerves. And probably somebody had to say to him, hey, Martin, like, hold on, like, come on, so on and so forth. Right. The only reason we have the dream speech at the March on Washington is because he's actually giving his I have a plan speech. I mean, that was the name of it, but in essence, he was laying out an organizing strategy for these several 100,000 people there. And Mahalia Jackson is pulling on his coat saying, Martin, tell him about the dream. A lot of people don't know the dream speech he gave earlier that year in Detroit. And she was like, stop telling them about the plan. Tell them about the dream.
And she was doing that as he was about to take the podium, wasn't she?
No, she was doing it as he was talking.
As he was talking.
Yeah. You could hear, it's Latina sister that was in West Side Story. I'm blanking on her name, but I'm looking at her right now. She tells a story about sitting right next to Sammy Davis Jr. while she watches Mahalia Jackson start tugging on him while he's talking. And she's going, tell him about the dream, and so this notion, we have a miracle because Martin was in community with people that could say, nah, don't go that way. And then there was moments where he could say to people who he was in community with, no, not that way, go that way. And I think if we're going to deal with the tough moments we have, is going to be because we are really in relationship with people, each other, and are willing to try to help each other along the way. Because I do think the temptation in moments like this is to come up with a plan and a strategy. And, Jerry, I've told folks, for good or bad, maybe somebody needs to call me on the carpet, but I've told folks, I don't want to come to any more meetings with these little 6-month, 12-month, 18-month plans. because I've done that and I don't have the sense that's actually meeting the moment that we're in. We need to start planning and organizing and being a community with each other around what we really need in our country, not what we think we can get and what will give us the cathartic relief that we want to feel better. So, I think the role of community in Martin's life and many of the other people who were as influential as he was in their own different ways, I think them being in community and playing the role that they did, that's really how we got to this sense of belonging. I think that's how he was able to hold on to it during some really difficult scenarios.